Welcome home, archivists. You look like you've been searching for a place to rest, but you've only found your way to the infinite 13th floor. Today's file was passed to me by a teacher who remembers a holiday that turned into a waking nightmare. They say Santubong is a place for rest, but some houses there don't want you to sleep. They want you to notice the traces they leave behind, the things that shed from the darkness. Tonight, we look at the file of the uninvited guest. Sit. Stay. Don't forget to sign out, if you can. It was supposed to be a weekend of barbecue and sea breezes, a quick getaway from the city. 5 of us, Amin, Shella, Zul, Farah, and myself, rented a secluded wooden chalet near the base of Mount Santubong. The air was thick and salty, the jungle was lush and aggressive, and the house looked perfect, from the outside. But as we unloaded our bags, the mountain loomed over us like a sleeping giant, its silhouette blocking out the late afternoon sun in a way that felt heavy and deliberate. Being responsible guests, we decided to give the place a quick gotong royong sweep before settling in. Shella took the lead in the master bedroom, wanting to clear out the dust. But as she pushed the traditional straw broom deep under the master bed, she pulled out a thick, tangled clump of jet black hair. It wasn't just dry dust, it was wet, matted, and smelled of old, stagnant drain water. We laughed it off as bad housekeeping from the previous guests, but the smell lingered in the floorboards like a warning. Shella cleaned it up, scrubbing the spot until the wood shone, but 10 minutes later, she walked back into the room and screamed. The floor was covered again. This time, it wasn't a clump, dozens of long, thin strands of hair were laid out in perfectly straight, parallel lines, as if someone had meticulously combed them onto the floor while we were in the next room. The room was dim, lit only by a single window, and the hair seemed to catch the light in an oily, shimmering way that made my skin crawl. In the kitchen, the boys were preparing the food, trying to ignore the weirdness in the bedroom. Zul opened a fresh, sealed bag of rice, only to find a long strand of hair coiled deep inside the white grains. Then we found another clogging the sink grate. The house wasn't just dirty, it was shedding. It felt as though something inside the very structure was losing its essence, or perhaps it was nesting in the rafters above us, letting its traces fall into our food. As the sun finally dipped below the horizon, the refreshing sea breeze vanished. The smell of salt was replaced by something cloying and heavy, the scent of bungamalur, jasmine. It was a floral sweetness so thick it made you want to gag, especially when it mixed with the unmistakable stench of rotting meat. Zul stood on the porch, his face twisted in disgust as he looked into the pitch-black jungle, where the trees seemed to be leaning closer to the house. We sat down for dinner, the overhead light flickering as if struggling against the darkness. "Where's Amin?" someone asked, noticing an empty chair. We looked toward the dark hallway and saw a figure in a white shirt standing there, back turned to us. We called out to him, but the figure remained perfectly still, a blurry shape in the shadows. Then, the back door creaked open, and the real Amin walked in from the opposite side, dripping wet and wrapped in a towel after an outdoor shower. The figure in the hallway was gone before we could blink. Fear finally took hold, and we decided to lock all the doors and sleep on mattresses in the living room. But the silence of the house was broken by a rhythmic scritch from the attic directly above us. It sounded like long, heavy fingernails dragging across the wood, moving slowly from one corner of the room to the other. Fine dust began to filter down through the ceiling slats, falling on us like gray snow as something heavy shifted its weight above our heads. Suddenly, Amin pointed at the air conditioning vent on the wall. A single lock of hair poked through the slats. Then another. Within seconds, a thick curtain of black hair was pouring out of the vent like a slow-motion waterfall, hanging 3 feet down and swaying in the cold air contrast. It looked like a hanging veil, or the scalp of someone hidden inside the machinery, watching us through the plastic slats. Shella ran to the bathroom, desperate to splash cold water on her face and stop the rising panic. She looked into the mirror and saw her own reflection, but in the background, the plastic shower curtain was bulging outward. A pale, gray hand with long black nails slowly began to draw the curtain back, finger by finger. She was frozen, caught between her own reflection and the terrifyingly thin hand emerging from the dark tub behind her. The bathroom scare sent us all back to the living room, where we heard a new sound, a low, melodic sobbing coming from the kitchen. It sounded like a woman mourning a lost child, a sound of pure grief. But as we listened, the sobbing warped into a sharp, erratic tittering, a high-pitched laugh that didn't sound human. In the shadows of the kitchen, we saw the silhouette of a woman hunched over the floor, her hair covering her entire body like a tattered shroud. "We're leaving. Now!" Amin yelled. We grabbed our car keys and ran for the front door, but the handle wouldn't turn. It felt like someone was holding it from the outside with impossible strength. Then we saw it. The black hair was now appearing under the door crack, surging into the room like a black tide. The strands were moving, snaking across the floor and wrapping around the boys' ankles, trying to pull them back into the house. I looked out the window toward our car, hoping for a miracle. There, perched on the roof like a giant predatory bird, was a woman in a tattered white dress. Her hair was so long it reached all the way to the ground, draping over the windshield. She was staring at the house, staring at us, with eyes that glowed like hot embers in the dark. She was the source of the shedding, and she was waiting for us to step outside. Amin fell to his knees and began to recite the Ayatul Kursi loudly, his voice trembling but determined. As the holy words filled the room, the atmosphere shifted. The hair in the AC vent began to retract, hissing as if it were being burned by invisible fire. The black tide on the floor shriveled and retreated into the shadows, and the weight on the door handles suddenly vanished. We didn't look back. We piled into the car and sped down the winding, pitch-black Santubong road. In the side view mirror, we saw a white blur flying through the high canopy of the trees, keeping pace with the car and leaping from branch to branch. It followed us with relentless speed until we finally crossed the bridge toward the city lights of Kuching. Only then did the shape vanish back into the mountain mist. When we got back to the safety of the city, we thought the nightmare was over. But when Amin opened his trunk to take out his bag, his face went white. Wrapped around the handle of his suitcase was a single, long, wet strand of black hair. It was tied in a perfect, intricate knot. He reached out to touch it, and he recoiled. It wasn't cold, it was still warm, as if it had just been plucked from a living scalp. A house is just wood and stone, until you invite the wrong guest. If you're renting a homestay in Santubong this weekend, do me a favor, check the broom before you sweep. And if you find a hair that isn't yours, don't wait for it to be combed into lines. Just run. Sleep well, if you can. And remember to subscribe to stay in the archive. We have so many more records to file away. Welcome home.